Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Collins, and I'm an occupational therapist and fellow homeschool mom. You are here with me in my dining room. So just in case you happen to see any kids running by, like this is totally homeschool central for us too. So hopefully you can feel my heart through all of this. My goal here is to help you to understand a little bit more about the sensory processing, which then can help your homeschool to be more sensory balanced. That starts with you as the mom, trickles down into your kids as well. So everybody knows about the 5 basic sensory systems. You probably learned them in elementary school: what you see, what you touch, what you hear, what you smell, and what you taste. But I'm going to go through a little bit more how they interact with each other, what that means for your homeschool, and the additional 3 other senses. So you might already know about the auditory and the visual senses. Auditory is what you hear, visual is what you see. Vestibular is in that same general area. It's within your ears, and it's how you know where your body is in space. It's how you know how to balance, and when your head turns, how you can keep your body still, and your eyes could either still look straight ahead or go with your head. So 2 times when this triad or these 3 things really come together. One, think about when you're driving. You're driving along, you hear a siren coming, you turn your head to look to see whether that police car is chasing you to give you a ticket, if it's a fire truck coming by. You can probably decipher between the 2 because you're familiar with the sounds, but your eyes don't turn and then your body go with you. You have to be able to know where your body is and then reorient to the front. So that's how those 3 work together. It's the same thing for our kids, especially in unfamiliar scenarios. Like here was a nature path that was brand new for my family. We were out on a hike. They have to be able to hear us calling to them, don't jump, or go ahead across, it's safe. They need to know how far they need to jump from stone to stone that is there, listening to all of their friends around them, seeing for depth perception. All those 3 are going to work together to help keep them balanced and safely across. When there's problems with any one of those 3, you might see some safety issues coming into play, especially in new and different surroundings. Another 3 that really work together are the tactile, or what you touch, olfactory is what you smell, and gustatory, which is what you taste. So those 3 come together, especially when you're trying a new food. So first off, how does something feel in your hands? And this is why kiddos oftentimes will start with finger feeding, because they can then prepare for what's going to be happening in their mouths. Food has so many different smells, different touches and textures that you have to feel in your mouth, and then tastes, obviously. So when those 3 are working together, it's fantastic. When we remove one, like for instance, when we give our kids utensils, so they don't necessarily know how something's going to feel to prepare towards their mouth, it's harder. But that's also what's more polite. So think about that when you're working with your kids or self-feeding or any of that. And also think through how can they be more involved in cooking, especially if they are kids that have either tactile or they're really sensitive to smells or tastes or textures in their mouths. How can they be involved with the cooking so they're more used to the smell by the time that they're eating or the touch by the time that they're eating? There's another resource that I would like you to know about, which is Beyond a Bite. It's a book written by one of my very favorite other OTs, and it is full of ideas in sensory play with food. Available on Amazon, so look up Beyond a Bite. Now here's where we're going to start to talk about some of those senses that you are not as familiar with, the proprioceptive processing. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't know about this at all until I started occupational therapy school. But then now I can think about all of the times that I use proprioception throughout the day. For instance, when I used to sit in school, I would flex every one of my leg muscles, alternating, try to keep me more focused on what is happening. Really what that was doing was giving me heavy work just by myself. So it's not that I was interacting with something else, but it was a way that I was helping to keep my body calm. You probably hear a lot about heavy work. So that's using their sensory receptors that are in our joints and our muscles and our ligaments that send messages to our brain that is very calming and helps us to know of what is our body position and what is our motion as we're going through. You might see kids that like to crash into things. You think, oh my gosh, they need so much all of the time. But in reality, they're actually trying to calm their body systems down. It's very confusing and often why I'm here helping, right? It also, proprioception helps us to know how much force is used. So if you hear someone say, like out on a sports field, they don't know their own strength, they're overthrowing the ball or kicking the ball so far and they have no idea how to control it. That's because their body is not really in tune to itself proprioceptively. So things throughout our day, because again, this is the most calming sense. I have my kids vacuuming because it's a natural way that helps out in our home, but it also gives them heavy work, that pushing of the vacuum, especially across carpet. Anything where they are jumping, because it gets a lot of force into those joints. Crawling is the best because you get all through your hands, your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders, your knees, your hips, all of them. Now you're like, Sarah, my kids are teenagers. How are they crawling? Girl, make them an obstacle course outside or inside, and they're all over that still. Sports are really good for the same thing. My son is a hockey player. My daughter's a volleyball player for these exact reasons, to help them understand their bodies and where they are. Now this sense, interoception, again, I'm going to be very honest with you. I did not even know about this one in occupational therapy school, and I graduated in 2007. There has been so much research to come out on this in the last 15 years or so. Interoception is really understanding what's going on inside of our bodies. It's understanding your belly. How do you feel digestion wise? Do you have to use the bathroom? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? It's understanding your own emotion, what's happening inside. So things like, I feel really happy. Okay, is that the same as when I feel excited? Or is that the same when I'm high alert because I'm stressed out? A lot of times it's very hard for kids to understand what is going on inside their body. They may know they just feel strange or off, but don't know why. And imagine how confusing that is. So in the Sensory Balanced Homeschool, we will be going over more and more about interoception. In fact, I even have an interoception expert who's coming in to speak to us. So if this is something where you say, my child had a really hard time being potty trained, or my child has no idea how much to eat, when she's hungry, when she's not hungry, or my child cannot regulate their emotions. They just go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, and then they're going from happy to mad to sad, just regulating and kind of all over the place. This might be a sense that we really need to talk about and delve in more to. Okay, so you're like, great, Sarah. So now I have this teeny tiny, the briefest idea of what each of these senses are and how they might interact with each other. But how does that play out into where my kid is having problems? Okay, so what I want you to think about is, what does your child need and want to do during the day? If your child is able to get through what they need and want to do during the day, then they are regulating their body enough to be quote unquote successful. If you are having problems with transitioning to activities, or with doing activities in new areas, or your kid really wants to try out for a sport, or really wants to be involved in this drama club, or whatever it is that your kid needs and want to do, it is different in every home. If they cannot participate in those activities because of one or another sense, whether it's because they don't know where their body is, whether it's because they're bumping into things all the time. Again, they don't know their own strength, like we were talking about before. They cannot regulate their emotion. Then that's when let's us go through it together, or seek out an occupational therapist. This is a whole continuum. So you can see a picture here. This is what is in the sensory profile that is done by Winnie Dunn, and what occupational therapists often use to help figure out, is my child seeking more sensory information? Are they avoiding it and it actually looks different? Like they're, again, bumping into things, and so I think they're seeking something out, but really that's because they're already overwhelmed and they're trying to use that proprioception to calm down. Are they unable to eat because they're feeling so upset about the textures in their mouth, so that way they're actively avoiding it, right? That's the sensory avoiding. Or are they just really, really sensitive, but actually not avoiding something? They're just feeling emotions, again, are they will scream, they will cry, but they don't actually know why. So those are parts of this continuum. So here, if they're passive, the self-regulation continuum, if they are passive versus active. So passive meaning that they don't actually avoid something, but we know that they're very sensitive to it. Active would be that they are avoiding something. On the flip side of that, if they have a really high threshold, so they need a lot of sensory information to get them going, to be able to attend, to focus, to be able to narrate back to you if you're doing your school lessons. Are they low on that self-regulation continuum, meaning they're not actively trying to get themselves up there in that, zone where they are really engaged with you? So they're just kind of living their day, looking around, zoning out. Looks like they're really not paying attention, but not because they're actively trying to get into it, but just because they're totally, looks almost like checked out. Or are they the seekers that are spinning and wiggling and need all these things in their hands because they do have such a high threshold? If any of those problems are making it so they are not able to participate in what they need and want to do, that's when we need to talk about more. So again, here we gave the briefest of explanations on what are those 8 sensory systems and the briefest explanation of how to integrate those, or to look at how they all work together, right? However, if you have more questions on how do we actually use the homeschool to impact these 8 sensory systems, how our kids are able to process them, organize that within their bodies, and be able to achieve what they specifically need and want to do, that's where we need to work together a little bit more. And I'm happy to do that either through private consultation with your family or the Sensory Balanced Homeschool Focus Group, which right now it's 2022. It's coming up in the month of November in 2022, and then we'll run again in 2023. So I'm super excited to go through all of that with you. So find us on homeschoolot.com, also on Instagram at homeschoolot, and in the Facebook group Homeschool Therapy Ideas. All of those will help you to figure out, one, where to find me to do any of those private consultations or to join the focus group. And there's also a lot more resources on sensory processing, handwriting, executive functioning, curriculum choices, motor planning, all the ways that occupational therapy and homeschooling come together, and that's at homeschoolot.com. Again, I'm Sarah Collins. I'm an occupational therapist and a fellow homeschool mom. Thanks for being here.